do I get the data at one place so that my data is analytics ready? I can do some meaningful analysis on that data. So my experience, a lot of organizations are still at that level of data engineering. I mean, people talk about data science and they come under the pressure of their boards to run some data science programs, some machine learning programs. But really what they need to do as a first step is to get hold of their data in silos lying all over. How do we stitch it together? Get it at one place. So that is called data engineering. So it's important to have data engineering discipline in an organization. Even if I look at English Helper, you have lots of data. You have opportunities to collect a lot of data. Sometimes organizations, the way they design their processes, they miss on that opportunity to collect data. So, and data is gold mine. So there is an opportunity to redesign your processes, think your front-end business processes, which facilitates data collection, which facilitates how students are consuming your product in terms of when they learn English, whether it is in a school or whether it's an individual consumer. Do they complete the whole course? Where do they stop? How do they interact with the platform? Multiple things. Even from a digital marketing perspective, which are my channels which are effective? If I'm spending money on Facebook ads versus Google ad or LinkedIn ad, or I'm just reaching out to people through telecalling. So you can optimize all of that effort. It has to be, it's not about spray and pray, I'll reach out to 100 people and make calls to 100 people. It's an expensive process. So you have to have a targeted approach. You have to have an approach where you're pinpointing who your customer is and then accordingly reaching out to the customer based on their needs and their probability of conversion if you want to get those people on your platform of English Helper. So those are some of the thoughts which I wanted to share with you. And again, when you talk about machine learning and deep learning, this is a bit of getting into the technique. There are tons and tons of techniques. The beauty of data science is that it's a community of people, and people are every month, they are coming up with new techniques. Now the current situation is Corona. In Corona situation, the past models are of no use. Models are based on past historical data. You build learning or machine learning. And as I said earlier, machine learning is nothing but you're using data to make certain decisions. Call it predictive modeling, data science, whatever it is, or forecasting. So now the past data and the current data is completely different. In the current scenario, the consumer behaviors have permanently shifted. Consumer behaviors have permanently changed. So your learning from the historical data is not going to be of any help. At the end of the day, it's no rocket science. We are learning from history and using machine learning to understand the future, what will happen in the future, who will buy my product, what will be my next best offer, who will default on the loan, who will get delinquent on the credit card payments. So you're understanding the future by understanding the past behaviors. So one source of data is your own internal data. Increasingly, there is a lot of effort going on working with external data as well. So a lot of companies are putting in a lot of effort in collecting external data. So again, if I take, if customers default on loans, do I know the data about the state that there is a certain job loss in this state? There are certain industries which have closed down. And those are all early indicators. If I know that well in advance, I can make my predictions better. So the decisioning is not just a function of your internal data. You have to leverage external data points as well, external data information. It is difficult. Sometimes people are collecting that information through brute force, through illegal sources. However, having said this, this is something which needs to be streamlined, and there would be ways to collect external data as well. And there are some external data which are available through partner networks. So the point I'm trying to make is that external data is also going to play an important role in understanding who your consumer is. These are some of the use cases which are relevant to any industry, including yours. If I need to make my better decisions, which markets to go, which customers to go after, how do I improve my product? So data is going to help you in better decision making. How do I enhance my customer's share of wallet and lifetime value are concepts which are used a lot in banking and financial services. But really what it means is that can I cross-sell? Can I retain my customer? If my customer has taken course one, can I offer course two? I don't know whether this is relevant to your industry or not, but in education, companies do that? How do I improve the overall customer lifetime value? How do I maximize my realization from a customer? Risk and fraud I talked about, whether it is about if I give a loan to a customer, whether my money will come back or not. Suddenly the fraud has increased in the last few months because people are under pressure, and a lot of digital payments have increased its all-time high, which all also, these kind of things also lead to more fraud. How do I increase the retention of my customers? How do I increase satisfaction and customers retain and customer continue to be with me? How do I have better campaign ROIs? I believe you guys do a lot of digital marketing campaigns, reach out to people, reach out to students, schools. If I'm spending 100 rupees or $100 or 1,000 rupees, how do I get the maximum return on investment? So we work with one big beverage major. It's an international company. We are helping them optimize their digital spend. They spend millions of dollars on digital media or TV or print, different mediums. So how do we optimize their spend so that they get the maximum return on investment? And then of course, maximize customer satisfaction. We work with an airline, hospitality, a client, hotel chain, where they collect tremendous amount of data about the consumers as well. I know that I'm slightly running over time, but okay. Thanks, Sanjay. So this is a view of a typical journey for a customer. So customers, when I say customers, corporate clients, companies like you and me, companies are at different levels of maturity. So as I said, you don't need to jump to machine learning, natural language processing from day one. I know that NLP would be an integral part of your product as such. That's also a data science technique. So start with descriptive analysis, generate insights, visualize your data, build simple dashboards, do what if analysis, root cause. Then you move to more predictive analytics and predictive models. It's an imperative. You have to move into these predictive and prescriptive things. It's now has to be part of the DNA of an organization. It has to be there. You always have a finance role, a CFO, an operations head, and there has to be a chief analytics officer. There has to be a data science team. It has to be built in any company's DNA, whether it is a technology company like yours and mine, or any consumer company, any bank. Everybody has to look at opportunities to collect data and do meaningful stuff with the data to better understand and predict their consumer behaviors. Absolutely no doubt about it. And now use cases like artificial intelligence, where, for a client, we were working and we were looking at their videos and images and finding out from a security perspective that which employees are not wearing a safety helmet while on the shop floor. So you can't do it manually and see everybody, like there are thousands of people. So look at the video clips and do artificial intelligence, video analytics, and image recognition on that. So unstructured data, the concept of, it's not just the numbers which is data, unstructured data, what people are talking about my company on social media, what kind of feedback I get, that's all text. So now through natural language processing, through AI techniques, you collect and extract a lot of the data to generate insights about your consumers. In your case also, you may have surveys or people would say some things, capture that as a data point and use it to my advantage. So you have to see where you are on the journey. And this is a typical, I'll skip the slide, typical cycle where you have to understand the problem. Problem definition is very important. A lot of times people just get into a data science project without defining a problem. What is that you're trying to solve for? Understanding of that business problem is extremely important. And then convert that business problem into analytical problem using your data. That which data points could be of help to solve this business problem. The business problem could be that I'm not able to retain my customers. Business problem could be that I want to acquire high value customers. I don't want to have customers where the customer lifetime value is going to be very small, because I don't want to waste my effort with small value customers. Different businesses have different business problems. Important thing is that whenever you analyze, model your data, predict consumer behaviors, it's extremely important. And if you put it in action, you have to productionize it. I have seen clients build models, generate insights, but they don't productionize and operationalize it. You have to integrate it in your process, whether it is campaign management or whether it is action, And then once you have taken the actions, when you have done CRM campaigns, marketing campaigns, you have to understand what worked, what did not work, and close that feedback loop and put it back into your analytics cycle. So it's important to close this loop, and whatever insights you're generating through dashboard, put it in action, learn from your actions, what went wrong, what went well, test and control, refine your program. It's an iterative process. I won't spend too much time on this slide. There are new roles which have come around data science. Earlier, when I was with my earlier organization, there used to be a data scientist and data engineer. Now, to operationalize, you may need UI and UX designers as well, because you want to create a consumption layer where people are consuming that insight and data through a meaningful interface. There are people who are storytellers who would create certain stories, evangelists who would make analytics and data science popular within the organization. There are a lot of data privacy issues which have come in. There are a lot of laws. So there are roles which have come around data privacy. There are people who are just bothered about just looking at how do I ensure data privacy and that we are not violating any of the government regulations when it comes to capturing consumer data. Otherwise, it could mean huge penalty to a consumer. There is a machine learning engineer who understands both data science and data engineering concepts. So the point I'm trying to make here is that in an evolved organization, there's multiple roles, and so there is a super specialization in the data science as well. Of course, you don't want to create this from day one, but as the organization evolves, you have to create multiple roles around it. Just like briefly a minute on automated machine learning. We have at Transform Analytics, we have an automated machine learning tool as well. What we have done is that we have also automated machine learning itself, data science itself, so that organizations can use those tools in an intuitive manner, and you probably don't need a very elaborate data science team. Even the MIS guys, BI teams, even the business folks can use those automated machine learning tools to build scenarios, build models. So this is going to be the future. And at Transform, we are disrupting our model by investing a lot of money and time in building those automated machine learning tools. For instance, our machine learning tool is called Clonizo. It came from cloning customers as a historical thought behind it. But AutoML, automated machine learning, automated data science is going to be truly disruptive and would disrupt the whole data science field in the next couple of years. And related to this automation, again, there's a lot of debate which goes within the market, and even some of the top entrepreneurs in US talk about robots and automation will take away my jobs. It's not happening. I mean, you need human intelligence, you need human intervention to make programs effective. Of course, the nature of the jobs would change. I was attending one session at my kids' school, and they're talking about teaching AI and ML at the schools as well. I was like shocked that I learned it much later in my life. Now this is going to be like Excel and MS Word, which all of us have learned it, but now you will have to learn basics of Python. You will have to, as kids, you will have to learn basics of data science, and you should know how to work with the data, how to generate insights. It's going to have a far-reaching impact on our society, the way we work, the way we think, truly so. When you say that jobs are going to go away and all, I don't see that in the near future. But having said this, in the longer run, the mundane jobs, repeatable jobs will go away. For instance, if you see robots to replace up to 20 million factory jobs by 2030, it's going to happen. So it's extremely important for all of us to protect our living and either become one of the data scientists, or some of those skills of leadership that can never be replaced, be it your EQ or emotional quotient, and be it your leadership skills to manage people. So there is a lot of focus on, again, working on those skills. Those skills can never be replaced by any algorithm. So just wanted to leave you with this thought. But again, quickly, I'll share a case study of a hospitality client. We work with this hotel chain. They were at a stage 3 years ago where they had multiple data sources. They had multiple systems, conflicting reports, manual reporting. blanket campaigns. They were just shooting in the dark, multiple teams working in silos. Then what analytics did was, first we put a data engineering team in place, stitched all the data, got it at one place, created a 360-degree view of the customer, as we call it. Then we started with simple dashboards, we automated their reports, and now we have moved to a point where we have a complete center of excellence for analytics, where we are building models, flurry of models, which are making decisions, helping business take decisions. Again, I would like to make this point very clear. Data science is just a tool. It is just another way to help you take better decisions. If you understand your business, you are 80% covered. It is just that it'll give you 10, 15, 20% jump. And that is a big jump. So that's where data science comes in. This is again a different view of this hospitality client. We started the data infrastructure. We did the deduplication. They had duplicate customer profiles. We deduplicated it. We created customer 360-degree view. We built propensity models. We created reports and analysis for different kinds of people. We helped them improve their loyalty program, cross-sell digital campaigns and marketing campaigns. How did we make it effective? We segmented their customer base. So again, a different way to look at it, what I just showed you on the previous slide, but all of it has helped the client to really have a very strong analytics program, and has helped them in this tough time as well. Because of this strong program, they understand which consumers will come back as soon as my hotels open up. I can target these consumers with these kind of products and offers. So this is the case study from hospitality sector, and this is my last slide, and I want to leave you with this slide. And today there is a concept of artificial narrow intelligence. It's a very popular term. If you Google it, we are doing artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and humans are still smarter than machines and these algorithms. But in the next 20 to 30 years, I would say that it will come at par with human intelligence. And then by 2060 and all, there is a high risk or high probability that some of these robots will be far more intelligent than we are. And as human race, it is important for us that how do we coexist and leverage and work together to the benefit of the society and to the benefit of the world around us. So I'll take a pause here. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to share my thoughts. We have, I think, about half an hour. So I'll be happy to take questions and related to your business, how you can use it, or any other questions related to your career, how you can make your career in data science, and not move jobs, but use it at English Helper. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Naveen. Very grateful to you for explaining so lucidly and demystifying the whole process. Thank you very much. Especially to me, everything that you've been saying, literally everything has been music to my ears. And it's also very appreciative of the fact that you actually were trying to relate back to what we do as a company and our business. So this was indeed great. Team, if you have questions, please raise your hand. So I have a bunch of questions here, Naveen, but I'll just see if the team is, yeah, we have the first question. Jaspreet, if you could unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question.
Can I request, whoever is asking the question to switch on the video so that it's helpful, and then you can switch it off.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, Jaspreet, go ahead.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, sir. I have actually two questions. First of all, thank you for such an informative session. My first question is, can you briefly put some light about your product Clonizo? And my second question is, according to you, what are the limitations of OpenAI GPT-3?
OpenAI what?
GPT-3.
What is? I'm not aware of it, to be honest.
Okay, actually,
development. Can you give me the full form of GPT?
It's generative pre-trained transformer.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Clonizo is an automated machine learning tool, whereas it said it helps in automating a lot of your steps. For instance, in Clonizo, what we do is that if it's a classification problem or it's a multi-class or a regression problem, if you want to segment your base, depending on the data and the problem you're trying to solve, there are a bunch of algorithms in the background. So as a data scientist, you have to think of which algorithm to work on, which algorithm to not to work on. So this really takes care of the right algorithm, automates a lot of steps, and really what you do in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month can happen in hours and days. So it accelerates your process. And also, given that we have experience with industries, say for instance, if we are doing a model for a banking client, so we have worked on banking client with different banks over a period of last 10, 11 years. So we understand if it's a delinquency model which we are trying to build, where customers delay their payments on credit cards or whatever it is. So in that case, we have that experience of multiple banks. So we have built that intelligence also into the tool, so that if a client has to build a delinquency model, we have that knowledge of which variables and which features will get into building that model. So that is really the objective of it. And we are giving the power of data science in the hands of business. As far as your second question is concerned, I will have to get back to you. There's so much of development which happens, and I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it to give you a very convincing answer.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Folks, whoever asks a question, Naveen made a request if it's not a problem with your internet, if you can just switch on your camera and then switch off after you've finished.
Thank you, Sanjay. I think we are still waiting for folks to form their questions. I'm going to go ahead and start my video. I have a question.
But I'll do that. I'll sort of stop sharing my screen as well, so that is that okay? So that
yeah, I think that should help. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Then yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Naveen, I heard you say during the course of your talk that companies have more data than they think they do, and I think than they think they do.
Yeah.
So there are various data points that we have not untapped. I think to some extent, probably we're also, guilty as charged. Do you have any examples where we could relate to how you've unearthed sources of data that were overlooked for quite some time?
Sure. So you're right. I mean, data is one of the big problems, Hema, is that as part of the natural business process and transaction, data is created. That is for sure. At times, customers don't create a mechanism to have proper backend databases or backend data tables so that the data is captured in the right fashion. It's lying somewhere in a jumbled fashion, which is not usable. So one has to put that process in place so that you can use it. And it is in silos. Sometimes one department is not aware of the fact that the data is available with this department. So it has a bit of a cultural element as well. And what as teams, we need to make that cultural change and have a better collaborative kind of an effort to understand where our data is lying as part of the natural process. Data should be lying somewhere. How do I structure that data? And how do I find opportunities to collect even more data? So data is there. People somehow deny it, that data is not there, I can't work on it and all. It's just a question of cleaning and putting it in a format which is used. So it's a story with even bigger organizations. So they have spent a lot of time in getting the data in order to be utilized for any decisioning purposes. So that would be my answer. I don't know whether it was, it satisfied your question and what you were asking for.
Oh, it does. Thank you. It ties back to the single source of truth.
Sure.
In so many ways. Yeah, thank you. Team, if you are not able to, yeah, there we have another question. Roshan, please go ahead, unmute yourself, open up your camera and ask your question.
Hi, Roshan.
Hi, just a second, I'm opening my camera.
Otherwise, you can't ask a question.
No problem. Hi, Naveen. So my question is a little bit technical. So for past few days, we've been evaluating OLAP queues for reporting.
Hmm.
And so do you think OLAP would be a solution for business or more like reporting that's constantly changing?
Yeah, OLAP is a very well-established technique and tool. So for reporting purposes, it will do the job. Absolutely, for your BI reporting, for your regular reporting. So if I have to answer your question, yes, it will do the job. And if you saw that case study of that hospitality client, initially when we had got all the data at one place, and we created OLAP cubes, OLAP mechanism and tools, and then we went into dashboarding and modeling.
Okay, I have another question. So when we talk about data engineering, are we always talking about handling big data, or are we just talking about a field that's more related to designing, building, and getting the data from variety of sources?
Second, so big data is a big misnomer as well. Big data, of course, means that it's not just about too much of data. It also means veracity of data, velocity of data, a lot of other things. So even in smaller organizations, if startups start their business, they need to have data engineering right from day one. It's a given. Otherwise, they are doomed, in my opinion, because other companies they have bigger companies like Amazon and all, they just rely, they are data science companies, in my opinion. Google, Amazon, Facebook are data science companies, and it's not a retail company at all because they understand the consumer behavior so well. So it's not about big data. Big data has its own complications. You need Hadoop-based clusters. There's lots of data, variety of data, unstructured data. But having said this, even small data needs to be taken care of. And for that also, you would need data engineering. You need to just look at the fields, what you have. Just don't get, technology in today's world is free. Python are free tools. Cloud, dirt cheap. I remember implementing programs in 3 years, 2 years, 5 years. And that is now done in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. So people who have invested in analytics for 5 years and people who have spent 5 months are standing at the right same starting point, starting line. So that's what my answer would be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan. I'm really impressed with the quality of questions. You know, they have thought of technical aspects of it very well.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not really so much of a technical person. I mean, I focus more on the business development activities for my organization. But having said this, you know, I have to know the stuff if I have to sell the stuff.
True. Thanks, Naveen. Varun, please go ahead and mute and take yourself off camera.
Thank you, Hema. Hi, Naveen.
Hi, Varun.
Nice meeting you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for taking the time off to speak with us today. I was wondering, so you get to work with a number of companies, and just out of curiosity, what is the biggest challenge across the whole data process that you find most companies grappling with, and therefore, what kind of suggestions would you have to keep it clean?
In the whole cycle, while data cleaning and all are issues, data all over is an issue, that's a known thing. One thing which I find which is really a struggle is to change the culture and somehow implement and operationalize data science models. People will do very nice models, dashboards, and insights. People will not use it. You publish your dashboard, people will not consume it. So how do we productionize this? How do we operationalize and make it as a part of the process is the biggest problem. Some of the analytics program and AI programs are underutilized. They have spent a lot of money in creating those programs, but it's not being consumed for campaigns, for marketing, for your business. It's underutilized. And it's two problems. One, a cultural change which needs to come from the top, that it has to be implemented in the system. You have a consequence management around it of not using it. And then of course at the ground level, when people start seeing the value of it, they get used to it and they see that they have suddenly become high performers and their metrics are looking good, then they will use it. And that's what used to happen in my and Sanjay's prior organization. We would not move without data science decisions. I used to speak to sales and marketing heads of international market, and they used to always reach out to give me this file, give me this target file. They won't move without us because that started to make their KPIs and their performance indicators look good. So link it to their own performance, make it part of their scorecard and KRA. It'll work. That is the biggest problem, an implementation and execution of a data science program.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Varun.
Thanks, Varun. Archana, please go ahead and unmute and take yourself off camera.
Hi, Archana.
Hello. Hi, Naveen. Thanks, Hema. Thank you for your time today, Naveen. My question is primarily to do with your, I have, out of curiosity, I just wanted to understand which are the industries that you work with, as in the industries present in your portfolio today, and which industry does your majority clientele belong to? And did you see a shift happening on that front post COVID?
So the biggest industry is banking, financial services, and insurance. Typically, 20-25 years ago, Capital One, Amex, Citibank, a lot of credit card companies, banks implemented analytics. And my background has been with American Express and banking. And so banks, financial services were early adopters of analytics because there was a lot of data available. They understood the value of it. There were risks associated with, they felt the need of recruiting mathematicians, statisticians, economists, punch it up with the business folks. So banking, financial services, insurance remains the biggest vertical. We work with the biggest airline. We work with hospitality clients as well. We work with CPG, FMCG clients as well. We work with automotive, telecom sectors. We work with across sectors. So to answer your question, Archana, BFSI is the biggest sector. Emerging sector is CPG, FMCG, where all these companies are doing well right now in terms of the consumption of food and food products. So those companies have had data, but they had different kind of data. They won't know who the consumer is one-to-one, like a telecom company, like your company, I'm selling my services to Naveen Jain or Sanjay Gupta, so you know who I am. But they won't know that if I go to a store and pick up a soap or a shampoo, they don't know me. But they have a lot of media data, brand data, distributor data, supply chain data. We are helping a client to optimize their supply chain right from raw material to the retailer level. Where are my breaks happening? How do I automate process? How do I optimize it? So CPG industry is adopting it well. And they have realized that they are doing well, and why not take advantage of it? Some companies, bigger companies obviously have been using it for quite some time. But even the mid-sized, smaller companies, I see that trend picking it up. Technology companies anyway, bigger companies do it on their own. Auto sector has also, manufacturing and auto, there are use cases which are coming. For instance, we worked on an image recognition project for a client where they had steel sheets and they wanted to count the sheets by looking at the photograph, looking at the picture. So we use deep learning, image recognition to count those. So there the use cases are more on operations, control, quality control, manufacturing, optimization, automation. Those kind of use cases are coming up. So manufacturing, CPG, those are upcoming sectors in my opinion. If you have any question, any particular industry, Archana, I can, if you have any industry in your mind, and I can answer that.
Not really. I just wanted to understand broadly which industries are you working with, and did you see a shift happening on that front, as in people looking for your services more or less after COVID?
So luckily, this is one sector which has done well. Of course, in some verticals like hospitality, aviation, our business is impacted. Having said this, we have simultaneously signed up CPG clients now because they are doing well. Right. Their sales are going up all-time high. At the same time, once the stress will settle down, analytics will recover very, very fast. Earlier, the use cases were my next best offer, my cross-sell. Now the use cases are retention. How do I optimize my cost? How do I improve efficiency? How do I automate? Those are also the use cases of analytics, which can be solved using data and optimization techniques. So there is a shift in use cases, fraud use cases, delinquency use cases. How do I make extract data from documents using NLP, which is extensively used, I guess, in your product, natural language processing. Rather than I go through those documents manually, I just extract using NLP my data. Can I do text analytics on that? Can I extract information from sentiments of people in images and pictures? So there is a shift in use cases. But I'm happy to be part of this industry, and I'm lucky at this industry would still do okay and do better. In fact, good times or bad times, everybody needs to optimize their cost, increase revenues. So analytics is going to be handy.
Right. All the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Archana. Usha, please go ahead and mute and open up your camera.
Hi, Naveen. Thank you for being here and spending some time with us. You did speak about data cleaning. So for few advisors to us as a company, like if you want to take, we also have data in all our various functions, what we do in our company. So what would your advice would be that we need to take the data to make, some intelligent outcomes out of it? 2 or 3 tips to us, like, okay, your data should be structured like this, or some kind of an advice.
Yeah, and so data cleaning perspective, one is that you need to close the tap as well. See, one, you need to fix it. For instance, we face a lot of deduplication problem. Duplicate. Naveen Jain is appearing 2 times in my database. So if I do a level at a customer level, then my analysis would be wrong. So you have to fix that so that you can start your analysis. Then fundamentally, you have to fix the processes, fundamental processes, because if you don't fix the process, you won't close the tap. It will keep on bothering you. The data will hit your database. You will have incomplete data. You will have fields where instead of writing proper phone numbers, people will just write 99999. So you have to create a process where people can't enter 9999. Or if people are entering their own numbers at multiple records, then it gets immediately flashed out that, hey, this number is your number and you have entered it 100 times in your customer interactions. So you have to create processes where there are controls, where people can't put in junk in the data. As part of your normal process, you need to design your data engineering in a fashion that it sits in a right fashion so that you don't have to spend date formats have to be correct. You don't give an option to have multiple date formats. So that cleaning you need to stop. So of course, first time you will have to do the cleaning, have to write certain codes and all, automate the process. But at the same time, also by making changes in your process, you have to stop wrong and, all the dirty data hitting your databases.
Thank you.
Thanks, Usha.
Dhiman, please go ahead, unmute and open up your camera.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi.
Dhiman.
Hi. So hi, Naveen. I had 2 questions.
Sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name is Dhiman. So hi, Naveen. I had a 2-part question. So my first part is part of the question is you said about as companies grow in scale, there is a variety of roles which are created, which is not sort of like from business analyst to data scientist to data engineer. So at what point does that transition occur? Means like the data engineer sets up all the relational databases and all the data streams are integrated, and means like at what point do these roles start to emerge? Means where does the handover take place?
So there is a concept of full stack developer in software circles. Similarly, in data science, in a mid-sized companies, in a smaller company, we expect people to play these different roles. So as a data scientist, it's not that you're given one data set, you build a model, then you exit. You need to hit the base table, be able to write some basic data engineering codes, merge the data, do data science model, and then also using your codes, productionize and put it in the system as well. But when the need becomes huge, when the organizations become huge, then it's best that we develop specialization in those silos. Data engineers typically would be people who, if you remember, there used to be DBAs in the past, database administrators. They have now become more data engineers. They understand the big data infrastructure. They know how to install a Hadoop environment. They know how to set up the AWS infrastructure, how to set up servers, how to get the data at one place, write data pipelines. So at that scale, you need to define those roles very clearly. And then data scientist just focuses on different techniques of machine learning, build models. Then there is a third team which focuses on productionization and operationalization. So that's when those boundaries are drawn. But having said this, in a mid-sized organization, smaller organization, those roles overlap a little bit. Sometimes you're expected to build KPIs for dashboards as well. You can build a simple dashboard as well. Even if you're a data scientist or a data analyst, whatever term you may want to call that slide, the purpose of showing that slide was that it is becoming even more and more specialized, more so in bigger and complex organizations.
Okay.
Right,
yeah. So my second my second question was, as someone who's interested in data engineering, what sort of tools and technologies would you recommend getting good, like having a deep skill set?
So one, of course, data engineers need to know SQL. SQL is extremely important. Number two, if you look at one data engineering track is more about setting up the infrastructure, where you know how to become a Hadoop administrator or a big data administrator, you know how to set up your nodes and everything. And then, data engineering is now happening on cloud as well, AWS, Azure. So they have a whole data engineering stack. You should know how to size up the opportunity. And if I have so much of data, how do I ingest all of the data? How do I create pipelines? And there are customized tools as well, like Informatica, BDM, Informatica, Power Center in past. So there are specialized tools as well, which are very effective for on-prem kind of implementation. Then Cloudera is used effectively for on-prem implementations on ingesting and processing data. You need to know a lot of tools like Talend and all, ETL tools is extremely important. So bunch of technologies and tools which you need to know. But again, if the organization become big, then you become expert on, say, Informatica only. You just focus on Informatica BDM, or you just focus on Talend ETL. So, yeah. So the point I was trying to make on that slide was a super specialization coming in this area as well.
Sure. Thank you for answering the questions.
Thank you, Dhiman.
Sumedha, please go ahead and ask the question.
Hi, Hema. Thanks.
Hi, Sumedha.
Yeah. Hello. Hello, Naveen.
Yeah,
First of all, yeah, I would like to say that just a minute, turn on my camera. Yeah. So this was a really informative session and wonderful presentation. So whenever we talk about the data, so the first thing which comes is it's about the privacy. So I have got 3 sets of questions. So I will go one by one. Is there any method available for preserving privacy in big data analytics for unstructured data?
So broadly from a data, unstructured or structure doesn't make a difference. Of course, unstructured data, if you're pulling out personally identifiable information or financial numbers, which are confidential. So it's again pulled and put it in some structured database or some database. So it's not so much about unstructured versus structured. From a data privacy perspective, of course, you need, there are again specialized roles which are coming in terms of data protection. There are bodies available. However, there are some good practices. Say, for instance, when we work any data science model or any model, we don't work with any personally identifiable information. So for us, you just give us a number. There's a customer ID. So we built all our analysis and models on that number, not on Sumedha or Naveen or anybody phone number and everything. Transaction is a transaction. Nobody knows whose transaction this is. So it's important to do that. A lot of times companies jumbled up their identifiable numbers as well, so that we don't know who the consumer is. In healthcare, people are super sensitive about their data. Banking, people are super sensitive about their data. That is one. Number two, technology has become really advanced. For instance, when we work with our clients, we directly work on through VPN, directly work on their servers. We never encourage our teams to get data on our servers and our machines. We have very stringent NDAs with those clients. So then we also expose ourselves if we get that data on our servers or any information. So there are a lot of best practices around it. There are a lot of documents floating around on Google which talks about best practice. And of course, then you have to follow the GDPR rules, government regulations, GDPR rules in Europe. Government is also saying that Indian government is put in some legislation or trying to put a legislation on data privacy and on data, somebody's privacy intrusion. So those are some of the good practices, but again, it's a very elaborate and a very detailed kind of a work, and people specialize in this area too. Does this answer your question, Sumedha?
Yes, it helps. So my next question is, what as per you could be the roles and responsibilities of data scientists in future, as we know that we are already going to see a lot of automated ML, and will they be in demand?
They will be in demand, and I think future or present, data scientist is a very popular definition that a data scientist is a person who understands the business, who understands the mathematics and statistics, and who can code as well. Though the coding and programming is not very elaborate and very difficult. So to me, data scientist is a business role. A lot of people think that as a role which sits in IT or it's a technology role. It's not a technology role. You need technology as an enabler. You need to know Python or some of those languages. Again, you don't need coding and understanding of the coding to the extent of a software developer, but it's an analytical role. You have to understand the business. You have to understand how to convert business into analytical problem, business problem to analytical problem, and then solve it using data science. So that hunger and curiosity to build stories from the data, generate insights. People start building models very quickly without even understanding and spending time on definition of a problem. So the role of data scientists will become good. It's as such a very high paying kind of a role in the market, a lot of demand. I find it very difficult to retain my talent. They get trained in our company and then join big companies at fat packets. And then I myself say that, go, I can't give you this much salary, so please go. So it's a tricky situation to be in, but I'm glad, this field is doing well and people are doing well, both from a financial standpoint and as well as it's a very satisfying kind of a field. Because every few months, there are new techniques, new ways, new research. People are collaborating and creating new algorithms. So yeah, that would be my answer, Sumedha.
Okay, that's great. Okay, this last question I would like to ask. So should data profiling be performed before data sampling or vice versa during quality assessment?
So data profiling is important. So we call it exploratory data analysis or data profiling. Understand the size and the type of data, schema, schemes, extremely important. And then of course you start doing your descriptive kind of thing and then you move to predictive. I never expected that you will ask me
no, actually,
questions.
Sorry?
No, I was not expecting more on the ground technical questions, but I'm glad you're asking this question.
Okay. No problem. Thanks a lot, Naveen.
Thanks, Sumedha.
Yeah.
Naveen, we've gone beyond time, but if you wouldn't mind another 5 to 10 minutes, we have
Let's go for 5 minutes. Give me a second.
1 or 2 questions here, Ma. Close with 2 maximum.
Yeah, just one more question and that's it.
No, I was just checking my calendar, so I have time, 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Suman, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you for your time. So in nowadays, in various platforms, we have to provide our personal data like mail ID and phone number. So can you share any basic tips how we can judge that it is safe or not? And how do we submit that?
Difficult question. I don't know. I think it'll depend on the reputation of the company, and we have to share email. If it's a food app, unless we share, they won't let us register. So there is no denying that, and there have been instances in education vertical and food apps and all data has been leaked in the market. So I think the only way is to just understand the reputation of that organization, the kind of data privacy, the kind of track record they had. As I was answering on earlier question, when it comes to the data hits their systems, they take good care of it, and there are very good practices on data protection so that their data is not leaked out. So a lot of these companies also have a reputation at stake. Their investors would really make their life difficult if the data gets leaked out. I don't have any convincing answer because I'm also a consumer like you. I always, whenever I share my email address and phone number, I always cross my fingers that I hope it is not shared with anybody else. But some bigger companies and good companies really invest a lot of money in protecting that by setting up controls and processes.
Okay. And my next question is, I want to know more about data analytics. So can you have any suggestion for any website or some channels?
Sorry, what's the question?
I want to know more about data analytics. So do you have any suggestion, any website or any platform?
Oh, okay. So there are multiple sources. One is, of course, you have free sources like Coursera, and there are multiple education academy and problems. In the last 3-4 months, we have also started our education vertical where real data scientists start teaching real problems, because you can understand the theoretical concepts on the web, but the only problem is that you miss those practical problems. They will pick out some traffic data from US and they will ask you to build a model on that, and you would have some data lying on Kaggle too. But students are not able to understand the real, what they're trying to solve for as a business problem. And that's the problem we try to solve through our education vertical, where we also have integrated internship in our program. I'm not selling my program here, but having said this was a need that people don't understand the practical aspects and practical uses of it. So if you learn any program, all the programs are very similar. Just try to implement within English Helper. Pick on a problem and be a sponsor for a problem which can be solved using data, so that you use your theoretical skills and your analytics skills, Suman, on a real problem at English Helper. That is where your concepts are going to be challenged. That is where you will learn a lot and you will understand the practicality of it. Otherwise, it becomes very theoretical exercise.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Naveen, for patiently answering our questions. It's been indeed great to listen to you throughout. Sanjay, over to you now.
Thank you, Hema. Thanks.
Naveen, I've known Naveen for almost 25 years now. When I met him, he was barely out of management school. And as I said to you, Hema, part of your introduction, he was always a cool and can-do guy. But what is very important, that he never faltered in terms of courage when he had a conviction. And so for him to come out of a really cushy job where he was doing brilliantly well, working with data and data sciences at American Express, and set up his own business. And I have watched him seed that business from when he first began to where he's brought it today. Naveen, all kudos to you, because it's hard enough to set up a business. It's almost impossible at times to be successful given all the challenges one faces in business. And you've done both. And you've done all of that as coolly and as calmly as you've done everything else that I've seen you do in your life. Thank you for responding to my request and spending the time that you spent today. This was a very comprehensive and very composed kind of talk, which without necessarily overwhelming us with too much of jargon and technology, you sort of provided perspective on how data and data-related sciences have evolved and why they are becoming so popular and what might be the future. And I loved the questions and the responses. As you can see, some of the questions came from people who are actually practicing data engineers and scientists within the company. We need your science a lot, and we're beginning to understand some of that ourselves. So thank you very much for spending time. What we do when we have these guest speakers like you, every Friday we have this tradition. Over the last few months, we've evolved this practice, which we enjoy tremendously. As our token of gratitude, 5 girls from a program called the Udayan Shalini Fellowship. And these girls are mostly in their late teens. They come from low-income families, and they will get, 5 of them will get 100-day English, spoken English program, free of cost, and because of your investment of time. So you'll get an email from us, and there will be a description of who's got what, but it'll be because of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Thanks for your kind words. You have been always nice to me. I really enjoyed the talk, and especially I was pleasantly surprised with the quality of questions as well. I mean, not to sound as if, I was not expecting such questions, but it was a good mix of business strategy and on the ground kind of questions. I really enjoyed the talk. I have learned a lot from this interaction, and I'll see seek more and more opportunities to interact with your team, Sanjay, and understand more about your business. So thank you so much. Really appreciate all of you taking out your time and listening to me. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Have a good weekend and stay safe.
You too. Have a nice weekend to all of you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.